Welcome to Fieros Reborn. Ahar, mateys. Ahar. Hello. Oh god, I've been working on a piece of art today. Piece of bollocks, more like, for the moment, because it's not a piece of bollocks, but it just feels it's fucking long. And I'm not even sure if I like it or not. I tend not to like things to begin with, anyway, that I do, and then they grow on me. But yeah, so it's nearly finished. I've been working on it all day. Literally all day though. 12 hours or more. So look how amazing I am. Yeah. I am a genius, but not only a genius, but I am the president of Genius America. That's my Donald Trump impression. Not only am I a genius, but a very stable genius. And a rich motherfucking genius too. So this is my piece of work for today. Loads of hours I have done, and I suppose I'm proud of myself for the amount of hours. I suppose I am. Yeah, and it seems to be getting better as it goes along. I mean, like the way I feel about the way it looks is improving as it goes along. Like initially, I don't know. It's like it's weird how I go, how I see my art. It's like to begin with, I can't even really see it. Like I'm drawing it, but when I look at it, when I'm not drawing it, I can barely kind of see what the hell is going on. And so it's strange because like when I'm drawing, I'm obviously seeing what I'm drawing, but something happens. Like it's almost like I'm sort of seeing the whole of it in a way, and I can't see the individual parts as such. I don't know. It's bizarre. I found that with my artwork a lot, where I'll do the piece, and then other people will say that they can see this and that in there, like they can see an animal here and a car there or whatever, a Pokemon here, and stuff like that. And I'll look at it and I'll be like, I can't see any of that. I just see the whole as such. I don't see any patterns in it. I just see an isness. There it is, and then gradually over time I start to see things in it, but it takes a lot longer for me to see things in the pieces than other people. Other people will just go, oh, there's that, I see that and this and that, and I'm like, just looks like a load of colours to me. Colours, yeah. Okay, so now I'm fully suspecting and expecting. Oh, those are similar words. I'm fulfilly. I'm fulfilly. I'm fully expecting and suspecting that the camera is gonna do some weird shit. So whether it's gonna slow my voice down at some point, there's gonna be a lip sync thing. It already looks to me like there's some lip sync shit going on. I don't know if that's the case for you. It's your own time you're wasting, camera. Is that gonna help? Is that going to help the camera? No. Yeah, so we've got a lip sync issue. We may have some frame droppage. We may have the mouth carrying on at normal speed, and then the words going, and then suddenly coming back to correct synchronization. Because I don't know what the fuck is wrong. This computer fucking thing. I don't know what's wrong with the camera / computer combo, camera plus computer combo, because it's just not. It's going downhill. It's taking a dive into the pit of doom, and the pit of shame at the same time. Shame on you, camera. Shame on you. And then the other day, the camera froze and the audio continued recording. So it's obviously like some issue between the actual image and audio are not having fun together. They're like oil and water. They're going and then like not enjoying each other's company. So they're having a go at each other. They'll be like, I'll carry on. I'm not carrying on. I can't be asked. Yeah. So anyway, so I'm fully expecting some of that nonsense to happen. Motherfucker thing. Yeah. Alright. So let's carry on with the story. Bing bing bong. I nearly killed my parents, but I ended up not killing them. Because I decided not to, not at the last second, but fairly close to the last second. It was nowhere near the last second. I decided not to. All right, and I went back downstairs. I put the knife block in, the knife back in the block. I was like, okay, and I never did anything like that again. I'll have you know. So I feel like I can let myself off the hook now because I never actually did anything of any harm to anyone else. In actuality. It's a dishwasher. I thought it was some giant person coming down the stairs, drunk, 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 drunk. But no, it's just a dishwasher. Isn't it? Yes, it is. Alright. So, oh god, I have to do this now, don't I? Right, so I didn't do that, as in I didn't kill them, as you well know. Well, you don't know actually, because you never seen my parents, so maybe I did kill them, eat them, bury them after I'd eaten them in the back garden, and then create a little circle of bones. No, I did not do that. I'm not Jeffrey Dahmer. Good lord. I need a wee. I've started the video. Wow. Bear with me, please. Okay, tarts, I'm back. Fieros Reborn. Here I am. Reborn. Double reborn with chips. A slice of lemon. Okay, hello. Okay, so I did not kill my parents, and I don't care anymore about that. And maybe that makes me an even worse person. But I can't hang on to these negative feelings forever, you know? I can't hang on to feeling guilt and shame and regret and stuff forever because it's just it weighs me down. And the purpose of these videos is to therapize myself, therapeuticize these emotions. So, you know, I cannot hold on to a continuous feeling of some sort of trauma about that. It happened. In many ways, I wish it hadn't have had, had not have had happened. In many ways, I wish it did not happen, but it did. I did do that. I did take the knife from the block, walked up the stairs with it, bread knife, got halfway up the stairs, giggled to myself about it being a ridiculous weapon, and then put it back in the block. Now you could say, oh, well, the only reason you didn't do it is because you found it funny that it was a silly weapon, and that's the only reason you didn't do it. I think it's a good enough reason not to kill someone. I think great reason. Any reason's a good reason to not kill someone, really, isn't it? I mean, any reason will do, I think. So, yeah. So I didn't. Marvellous. And as I say before, I don't think I could have actually got any further than that anyway. Because my humanity kicked in and overrode the evil impulse inside me. So, good. good, good. They are still alive and well. No thanks to me. No, they're still alive and well. I did not kill them. I did not. I'm telling you, I did not. Okay. Yeah, and as I say, they only found out like later on that I'd even done that. But I suppose it was something for me that was in the deep recesses of my mind, and it came back to me later. And I went, oh God, I did that. And then I had to go through it quite a few times, even to be able to kind of get clear on what actually happened and why I didn't kill them, for example. So maybe this is a good example of well, how far my psychosis actually went. So at this point, we're kind of a bit beyond it being just a spiritual adventure. This is when it became something much deeper and darker than that. Because up until that moment that I laughed at the fact that it was a bread knife I was using, up until that moment, I was pretty much identified with that course of action and was intending to follow it through as far as well, it was like I was following this exercise of follow your awareness thing. So I was trying to, I don't know exactly what I was trying to do. I suppose it was something like I was trying to allow myself to have that feeling and to go with that feeling as far as it went. And to be fair, the exercise kind of worked, as in it went as far as it went, and then it faded out. But there is the sense of coming up right up to the edge of sanity, or the edge of humanity, you know, with that. Like, I'll just allow myself full freedom of behaviour. I'll allow myself to give myself the option to kill my parents if I want to with the bread knife. Oh, and I'll get halfway along to doing it before I go, I don't really have to do it. You know, that's a pretty dangerous game to play. A pretty dangerous exercise to play, to do, whatever. Yeah, so it's pretty dark. It's pretty damn dark. Well, as I say, it's like, what can I do about it now? I can't do anything about it now. That's something I did, and I'm glad I didn't go all the way with it. There's nothing I can do about it, though. I cannot take back that action. And no one was actually harmed in that moment. So I guess it's just hard to deal with having it there in the background of my psyche as something that has happened that is possibly the worst thing I have ever done, or the darkest thing I've ever done, certainly. Yeah, okay. The scariest thing, the thing that scares me the most about myself that I have ever done, yeah. Like the possibility is pretty scary. Of maybe me being capable of actually doing it. That is a scary possibility. Okay. What else? Oh yeah, so I managed to get the story to the point where I was in hospital. So I should just say as well, like, I mean, this part of the story is a bit of a mess because one minute I'm like supporting myself in terms of going along with my actions, as in like the way I'm telling the story, I'm kind of saying like, yeah, I see where I was coming from, I understand what I was doing and why I was doing it, and on the other hand of it, it's like, well, that's actual madness. That's a horrible thing. So it's like I'm playing, I'm going with two angles, which is how I was at the time and then how I am on reflection. So, for example, I'm about to tell you about some of the stuff in my journals, right, which was used as evidence. Now, at the time, I was really, really pissed off about that. And in the last video I was mentioning, or a couple of videos back or something, I was mentioning about how my journals were used as evidence as to show or display symptoms of my insanity or my psychosis or my mental illness, whatever, whatever you want to call it. my journals and my pictures were used as as an evidence thing to say that, look, he's displaying thought disorders and emotional disorders and stuff like this because look at his journals, right? And so from the perspective of me in the story, I was really pissed off about that because it was like they just don't get it, kind of thing. They're not getting what I'm doing and what I'm going through. That I'm not. This is nothing harmful. It's just a process I'm doing for my own what do you call it, like sort of emotional feelings or something. It's just what I'm doing as an expression of the journey I'm going on. It's not something that is. It's not like I'm planning to do anything bad to other people. I'm using it as an expression, as just an expression of my difficult feelings and difficult impulses and stuff like this. So it was really, I felt like I was being chronically misinterpreted at every turn, basically. So every action I did was always looked at with the negative mental illness frame, rather than being investigated and and for me to actually explain myself. And even if I did get the opportunity to explain myself, no one believed it anyway, or no one knew where I was coming from. No one could seem to come along with me or to just say, okay, that's fine. And then, so that's from that perspective. But from this perspective now, I'm like, well, if I encountered myself, let's say, if this me now encountered my younger self, sorry, in the past, I would be like, I'd be like, okay, this is weird. Like, maybe you need some help because I've been through this stuff and I used to do random shit like this. And the way you're talking is a bit whack, and I think this is not good for you right now. What you're saying and doing. Yeah. So I think I would look at my own nonsense, my own ramblings and stuff from this perspective. Now I'd look at that person, and if they came to me, I'd be like, yeah, maybe we should get the mental health services involved, for example, or maybe we need to see a doctor. So I would be from this kind of perspective now to say to that younger version of myself, dude, you really need some fucking help because you are actually nuts. Like, um, and but at the same time, I would be empathetic because I'd understand where that person is coming from, because I'd be like, okay, I see that you're very, very invested in your internal journey at the moment, but your experience of the outside world is not really matching with what other people's experience of the outside world is. So you kind of, your reality is very, very different in understanding to how other people are understanding their realities. And at the very least, that's a social problem for you. Like, that's a social problem because look, young Rossi boy, look at it. Even though your journey may be important to you and whatever, look at the chaos around you in the family. That's a problem for you. You can understand that that's a problem because you are saying even that these people are fucking annoying you and everyone's trying to get you or whatever, and everyone's judging you, right? So that is a problem for you from your own perspective, let alone how other people are perceiving you. From your perspective, it's a problem, isn't it? And I would have to say, at that young age, yes, please stop them from being dicks. And then I would have to say to him, well, the only way that you can stop them from being dicks is by you taking action, which means to go into a mental health hospital, to take these medicines. And I can immediately hear my younger self saying, I don't want to take medicines. There's nothing actually wrong with me. This is a valid experience. I'm having a conscious experience. I am in full consciousness. I am aware of everything I'm doing. I am just free from the social limitations that most of you idiots are um, bound by. And also, I am in touch with other levels of experience that you're not even in touch with. I'm in touch with psychic experience. I'm in touch with my emotional experience more deeply than you are. I'm in touch with the spiritual level of experience. I am receiving all other different kinds of information that you're not receiving. So you don't really have a right to tell me what my experience is and whether or not it's valid. and therefore you don't have a right to tell me that I need to have medicines to change that experience, because I am not having a problem with my own experience. Okay? I am okay with my own internal experience. You are the ones who have a problem with my expression of that. So maybe it's you chumps who need to change and not me. Blah, because you're the ones with the problem, not me. Right, there we go. And then I would say something like, yeah, fair enough. Well, what are you going to do then? Because obviously in this situation, everyone around you thinks you're nuts and thinks you're mad. So you have either you carry on the way you are and you just accept that everyone thinks you're mad, and you leave that to be them. That's their deal, and you don't let it affect you anymore. Or you go off and live somewhere where it's okay to be who you are and to be experiencing everything that you're experiencing. And you would have to do that now. If you really cannot tolerate these other people judging you and labeling you and hounding you and giving you all these meetings, then you really should do something for yourself to remove yourself from those people. Are you going to do that? And if not, then you're pretty much by default asking to be taken into a mental health establishment. Because if you're not going to go somewhere where psychic powers and empathy and consciousness and spirituality is accepted and encouraged, then at this time, because you know that all these people around you think you're nuts, then you're basically just inviting this chaos. So do you want to go into mental health institution, or do you want to go off to India and be a roaming yogi? Because if you cannot go to be a roaming yogi, then unfortunately the only course of action that we are able to take right now is to get you some medicines to bring you down into a less psychedelic, shall we say, experience. And I'm sure he probably wouldn't have listened to me anyway. But if I'd have said a lot to that little person inside me, that younger self, then that younger self would be quite happy, because one of the things I was really looking for when I was at that age was kind of sympathy, care, compassion, understanding, being listened to non-judgmentally, because all I was coming across was judgment and people trying to change me and to try and direct my life in certain ways, to be pushing me around in some way, whether it was for me to get a job, to stop being crazy. And there's the thing has stopped. I don't know how long that's been like that for, but I look sad in this one. Previously I looked disappointed, but now I look sad. Fine, so now we're into podcast mode. Oh god. Okay, well, where was I? Oh man. Podcast mode engaged. Yeah. Oh, I can't remember now. I'll just have to leave that and just go back to the story. So I got sectioned. Probably, all right, let's admit it, rightly so. Rightly sectioned. I think it was probably the only course of action really available for the people around me. It was that or get me sent to jail. Like I could either leave. They could have either leave. Oh man, they could have either left it long enough for me to go really nuts and to like take my aggressive urges further than I had done. So, for example, further than just slapping my dad. I mean, who knows what might have happened in terms of the aggression on that side if I continued to feel like I was being judged and continued to feel like I was being labelled and continued to have these people hounding me and so on. Who knows whether that aggression would have just continued to spiral and got bigger, and I would have ended up possibly, I'm saying possibly, I could have ended up being more violent than I had been. So they could have let that carry on like that, or they could have, and then me end up in jail, for example, and with other people hurt or seriously injured, who knows. Or they could call the mental health people and get me some medication, get me in a safe environment, supposedly safe anyway, and get me away from the outside world, and give me some, as I say, medication to bring me down and numb me out a little bit from the psychedelia of it all, which is what happened. So I understand why they did that. Yeah. But I still sympathise with the person who I was. I sympathise with that little guy who just feels like the world has suddenly turned against him, and to all intents and purposes, it had. I mean, uh, everyone's in my life, everyone's attention for a significant part was focused on me, and in a negative way. There was not much positivity being directed towards me. So yeah. Um, Obviously, from other people's point of view, they'd be like, "We're trying to get Ross help, but he just won't do it, and he's not like listening, and he's not kind of um, doing anything about it, and there's nothing we can do," and they're feeling helpless and powerless and stuff, and distressed and distracted and distraught and anxious and worried and stuff, and in trauma of their own because of how I'm behaving. But I can't take responsibility for their feelings. I mean, I can try and understand them, but I can't take responsibility for their feelings. So I've got enough fucking to deal with. And their feelings are their feelings, and their actions are their actions. My actions are my actions, and my feelings are my feelings. So there you go. What next? All right. So I was gonna I started telling the story of when I was in Ward 10. So I got sectioned. Let's do this in a little bit more detail. So I refused to talk to the sectioners on moral dignity grounds, and they interpreted that as being a bad thing, as a sign of a mental health problem, a sign of his psychosis, and to the point where he needs to be in a hospital so we can tick enough boxes on our sectioning sheet to get him into hospital. So that's what they did. As I say, I told my dad to leave my mum and to stop being such a wuss. Oh man. Yeah, okay. And then I was carted off in the police van with my psychiatric nurse, community mental health nurse. Got to the ward, was shoved in a room. Brief introduction to the ward in that room. Definitely got a flyer. Did I get a flyer? I must have got a flyer. Yeah, I got a flyer at that time. Right, so I'm on Ward 10. Now we can go into a bit more detail about being in Ward 10. Ward 10, Wexham Park Hospital, Slough. Psychiatric ward. Dun, dun, dun. First floor. There's a smoking room. I have my own bedroom. In contrast with that, in some wards they have dormitories. So there was, on the second ward I went to, Ward 12 in Ascot, Heatherwood Hospital, psychiatric ward, Ward 12, they had some dormitory rooms where there was like six or eight beds in one larger room, or maybe it was 4 beds, I can't remember, but it was more like a dormitory type of room, segregated from male and female were in different parts of the ward, separated by a fair distance actually. But yeah, in Ward 10 I had my own room, bed, little chest of drawers thing, and a wardrobe. Anything else in the room? I don't think there's anything else in the room really. Just bed, chest of drawers, and a wardrobe, and windows that were locked down. Yes, which is an important fact because obviously, as soon as I realised that I was actually trapped and contained in here, I wanted out straight away. In fact, I wanted out before I even got there. And I wanted out straight away while I was in there. I was like, I'm not supposed to be here. This is wrong. This is incorrect. This is an incorrect assessment of the situation. I am not supposed to be here. That is not the thing that they say is wrong with me. It's not actually wrong with me. It's wrong with them, or wrong with the way that they're assessing things. I'm not supposed to be here. I'm on a protest. I want to get out. I'm not supposed to be here. Let me get out. I need to get out. Find a way out. Let's find a fucking way out. Right? And then so I'm like looking around for ways to get out. Exit doors locked. Windows are locked. Everywhere's locked, basically. It was only later on that I realised that the lift, I could go down the lift, but I'm not exactly sure why I didn't go down the lift before. I think maybe you needed a certain key to use the lift, because otherwise I would have just gone out there straight away, pretty much. So I'll tell you more about that later. That could be a mystery for the moment. I did escape, but I'll tell you how later. So I'm in the ward. I've looked around everywhere to see if there's any potential escape routes, and there are not any potential escape routes. Not to my feeble escapist's mind, anyway. It was really annoying that like, I don't know how the windows were kind of shut down. But it might have been that if I could have got a screwdriver of some kind, I could have like unscrewed the windows from their frames and got out that way. That was an idea I'd had, but something prohibited me from doing that. Like maybe they weren't screws, maybe they were kind of rivet things. I can't remember exactly, but there was a reason why I couldn't open the window in any way. Okay, so I mentioned as well that they took my headphones because of the cord, so that was difficult because I was really into music. But there was a radio in the smoking room, which I remember hearing Paramore Misery Business on and doing some air drumming too, which was cool. But yeah, and later on actually we got around the whole headphones thing by having a small boombox type CD player thing. So it's a little, oh god, what's the name of it? Well, it's just a cheapy kind of maybe 30 or 40 quid little CD player thing that I had in my room on the second ward, but on the first ward I didn't have that. So I was going a bit nuts from that. From my own perspective, I mean, about the fact that I wasn't able to listen to music anymore, because music was really, really important to me then. It's weird how music is less important to me now. Like, I mean, I still like it and everything, but I'm not. Music was a burning passion for me in my early 20s and even in my early. So from my teens, all the way through to, I don't know, about age of 28 or something, or maybe even longer than that, age of 30, 31. Music as a whole was just amazingly important to me. Now it's like it's a part of my life. It's not like the biggest thing in my life ever. I've relaxed back from music for a bit because I got kind of jaded about the music scene in the local area. So I actually even listen to less music than I used to. But that's nice in a way because I was feeling like I was oversaturated by it and I couldn't deal with listening to too much music. And I kind of go in and out of feeling good about music and hating it and stuff. Mainly because a big chunk of my life has been dedicated to making a living from it and never having actually made a decent living from it. Not by my own judgment, anyway. Yeah. Okay, so I'm in the ward. I can't listen to music of my own thing. There's a guy in the next room who's been cutting himself, and he's got a cotton wool thing on his arm, his wrist, I think. Yeah, and I ask him like, why, how come, what's that all about? And he said, oh, because I couldn't deal with being anxious, or I'm so anxious or something, or I just needed to do it because I was so anxious about some argument I'd had with my mum or my girlfriend or something. I can't remember. When he got anxious, he used to cut himself as a stress reliever. basically. Yeah. But he looked pretty unhappy about that situation. He didn't. He looked like very ashamed of the fact that he'd been cutting as well. So he seemed very sort of upset generally, and he was crying and stuff as well a lot. So he was going through some stuff. Oh God. Okay, and then blah, 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 blah. I remember there was a piece of artwork. I think it was in the first ward. There was definitely a piece of artwork in the second ward. But there's a piece of artwork in the first ward that I ended up just kind of looking at and meditating with for a while, but ended up getting frustrated with it that it wouldn't do what I wanted it to do. It wasn't powerful enough because it was basically a what do you call it? Commercial piece of artwork, but one of those really lame ones. So you get some artworks that are these big pieces on canvas that the artist just churns them out, like does loads of them, and they may even be mass produced by machine. I don't know, but they're certainly like very, very generic, and hardly any care is put into them, that kind of thing. But they all have a similar sort of design. I'm sure they have a name. They're like commercial, generic, abstract pieces of work. So they've got paint on them and everything. They're not prints, but they're very, very generic, very standard, and they are not of a high quality, basically. So I was looking at this artwork and I was trying to zen into it and realize the true nature of the artwork as being one with myself and being an expression of God. And I got it for a little bit, but then it kind of faded because the artwork was poor. It was a poor quality piece, and I was quite upset with it for being crappy. And I was also upset with the fact that the art could not change my situation. That was a important thing for me. And then yeah, so I was upset that no matter how much I looked at this piece of artwork, it wasn't going to do anything to help my situation. Um, so like in a way, I was trying to gain some sort of sense of power or something, or meaning from the artwork. And I sort of wanted somehow for the artwork to help me in a way, um, like why did they put this artwork there? Is it just meant to be a decoration? What is it meant to do? Is it meant to improve the ambiance? What? And so I felt quite unhappy with art in general because I was in this terrible situation, right? And no one seemed to be helping me get out of it. And the artwork didn't get me out of it. So I think that's something, because I was so into my art at the time as well. I really believed that art had a power inside it, and I still do believe that art has a power inside it. But I was really upset that this artwork on the wall could not help me in any way. Now, obviously, that seems like a bit of a stretch anyway. I mean, how's an art piece of art going to do anything? It's just sat there on the wall. But I really wanted that piece of artwork to help me, and it couldn't help me because no one could help me in that situation. Because my definition of help was to get out of there on my own terms. And I was not going to get out of there on my own terms. I was only ever going to get out of there on other people's terms. And in fact, the reason I was in there was on other people's terms. So nothing could help me because that situation was wholly on other people's terms. And I did not have any independent power to do anything about it other than to go along with other people's terms. Yeah, okay. So I was in this ward. I got my little bedroom. Got my rucksack of stuff. Didn't want to speak to my parents at all, but I ended up speaking to them after putting them off for ages, and telling the staff members I didn't want to speak to them because they were calling me and stuff to see how I was, naturally. But I was like, I don't want to speak to them because in my mind, they were the ones who'd put me there. It was their fault that I'd got into the ward in the first place. Like, they're the ones who called the mental health services to get involved. They're the ones who got the police involved. They're the ones who are asking and pleading with the mental health services for me to be sectioned. You know, they were the bane of my existence, and I was really pissed off at them for the fact that I was now in a mental health ward, psychiatric ward, or whatever, trapped, just somewhere that I felt like I shouldn't be. It wasn't right that I was there. It was their fault that I was there. I didn't want to speak to them, but I did end up speaking to my mum. It was especially my dad's fault in my mind at that time. Especially my dad's fault, because my dad was most militant about getting me help. From his perspective, it was help. From my perspective, it was not help. It was annoyance. It was restriction. It was being controlled, being pushed around, being told what to do, being told I'm insane, blah, 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 blah. Right? So, from my perspective at that time, my dad was the bad guy, the big bad guy, and my mum was a secondary bad guy, but sometimes she was okay. My dad was pretty much always the bad guy. Very rarely did I have any positive moments with my dad during that time. My mum was kind of helpful sometimes and a hindrance other times. Notice everything was from my own perspective at that time, by the way. That very little was to do with a genuine understanding of how other people were feeling. I mean, some of it, like, so I understood, I realise I'm going back against things I've said earlier on. I mean, I understood where they were coming from, but that didn't mean that I was necessarily going to change what I was doing just because they felt how they felt. So there was no action component to my empathy, really. Like, I could feel where they were coming from. I could understand they were upset, but I wasn't going to change my behaviour or what I was doing or thinking or feeling, whatever, just because they didn't like it, kind of thing, or just because they weren't having a positive experience of it, because to my mind that was their deal and that's their problem. So, and their feelings are their feelings, and like that would have been overstepping my personal boundaries to kind of conform to other people's wishes all the time just to make them happy with me. Yeah, okay. I'm starting to get a bit lost now. So let's go back to the ward. Not in real life, obviously. Okay, so I'm on the ward. They've got the smoking room. I'm not a smoker at that time in my life. I'm not a smoker at this time in my life either. Not really, anyway. I have a little puff here and there. But yeah, at that time in my life, I'm not a smoker at all. But I went into the smoking room because it was like a communal area. It was a communal area. As I said in the last video, it was a squarish type of room with chairs all around the outside, and there was a little radio on a table at the back of the room. Yeah, on a table, as I say, sorry. Yeah, and they had it on XFM, I think. XFM. Yeah. Which was nice. And so I can describe a few of the people who I met in that room. I can describe at least 2, maybe 3. So it's a pretty dark room, both in terms of the lighting and in terms of the psychological space. So you got a lot of smoke going on in there, obviously, because it's a smoking room. And everyone is in there. So everyone who is in there because they have been either sectioned or they have admitted themselves into the psychiatric ward because they have a mental health problem, either reported by themselves or by other people. So they're there because they're not like everybody else, basically. And it was noticeable that no one in there was like anyone else. Everyone was very unique and individual and had their own unique psychological complaints, shall we say, and psychological eccentricities and emotional eccentricities, along with, differences in clothing and stuff, which seems like more normal sort of differences. So I'll describe a few people. We had man with crutches rolling cigarettes and smoking cigarettes constantly. Long hair, long whitish grey hair, moustache, tubby belly. Didn't say much, but seemed a bit gruff. I didn't really speak to him. Then we had the lady who, well, I think she was probably about 35, between 35 and 40, but maybe younger, I'm not sure. Sometimes mental health stuff ages you and you look older because you're more depressed and more haggard by the traumas of life. That's true, actually. Like, the way you feel tends to project out to others. So if you feel old and depressed and grey and dull inside, then you tend to appear like that to other people. So you can appear a lot older just because you're tired and worn out and depressed and sad looking. Yeah. So I feel like I look younger now than I did about 5-6 years ago because my energy feels younger. I'm more like woo, out bright. Yeah. Anyway, okay. So there was the girl, lady, whatever. I'm guessing like okay, I can't really remember, but I'm guessing she was between the ages. All right, let's lower it and higher it. So between the ages of 10 and 55. No, she's in. She was I don't know. She's between the age of 25 and 45, but I guess she was probably about 35. That'll do. Maybe 38. So there she was, and so her main thing was every time there was a loud noise, she would shriek. God damn it! Oh, now I'm gonna have to be honest with you. I am not politically correct about mental health stuff. Maybe that's been made clear already, but you know, from my perspective, I was in a fucking place with a bunch of nutters. And other people thought I was a nutter. So I have license to comment on nutterness. I just don't care either. I just don't care. A spade is a spade. This person was a nutter. Okay. So obviously, from her perspective, there's a reason why she shrieks at loud noises. Yeah, she's gone through some trauma. She's got a big kind of PTSD thing going on, where she's very, very scared all the time. And from her perspective, I can imagine that's a horrible fucking place to be in your mind and your emotions, because I can only imagine that your emotions must be intense all the time. Always intense fear going on. That's not a happy place. And your mind must be going nuts all the time, in fear, in a fear racing kind of fear way, right? So that's not a happy place to be. I understand that, and I've been in a similar feeling myself, so I understand that, but it's silly in a way, isn't it? It is silly because not everyone shrieks at small noises. I mean, they weren't particularly loud. It's like someone dropped something on the floor, and it was loud enough to trigger her, and she went, "Ah!" And then, so, I don't know. How come she didn't get triggered by her own shrieking, though? That's the thing. She was like, "Ah!" And she would shriek quite often. So, how come the shriek didn't trigger another shriek? Maybe it did. Maybe that's what it was. Yeah, so every now and again, when any sort of loudish noise was made, she would go, "Ah!" like that. "Ah!" Like quite a loud shriek, louder than I'm doing now, because I don't want to subject you to it. It's quite a sharp thing as well. "Ah!" Really sharp shrieking. So that was kind of there. That was oh, it was bizarre. It was bizarre. It's kind of amusing and bizarre. Yeah. Also, I asked her like why. 'Cause I was a very inquisitive kind of person. I said like, why? What's going on? Why how come you're shrieking or shouting? And she said, oh, because I've got some condition like PTSD. I can't remember exactly what she said, but I've got this thing where any loud noises really frighten me. I'm really scared and make me shriek. Oh man, yeah. And I was like, oh, that sucks. And it does suck. It does suck. But also, from a sort of dramatic point of view, it's quite funny because you're in there, and every time, like every few minutes or so, someone randomly shrieks. And it's like, well, what do you do with that? What do you do with that information? I mean, what, am I going to cry for them in sympathy? No. I mean, that person needs therapy. That person needs some real therapy, and to probably not be in a mental health ward, really, in order to get some real help, apart from the medication to begin with, I suppose, like to calm her down a bit, to subdue her body system and her brain system, to a point where she can then actually have some therapy to go through where this came from, and to go through all the feelings around it and stuff, and pick it apart, and process the events leading to that trauma that caused that shrieking thing. But in that moment, I think it's justifiable to be amused by the occasional shrieking of of a person. Like someone closed the door slightly too loud, and she's like, ah! It's just, oh dear. Okay, so it's amusing from an outside perspective, but it's obviously horrendous from her perspective. On the inside of her body, doesn't feel good. But yeah, okay, so that was that, and then oh god, so we have there's a person sat in a chair, like I'd say directly opposite me. So if you imagine a square room, you've got the door on the right hand side of the room at the bottom. Okay, I'm pretending I'm looking at a square on a page, right? So drawing a square on a page, bottom right corner, you got the door on of that room. Okay, door in the bottom right corner of that square. You got chairs all the way around the edge. Shrieking woman and old gruff man are on the right hand side in chairs on the right hand wall, and then you got the radio on the far wall. So that's on the top part of the square in our picture, top of the room there. Yeah. Radio was at there, and then on the left hand side of the room you've got some windows that are the windows open? I'm not sure. They must have been getting some kind of air in there, and if that's the case, then why didn't I jump out of those windows? I'm not sure. Maybe they had an extractor fan. I can't remember exactly what the situation there was about the windows. I mean, I'm guessing they were closed and they were using some kind of fan thing, but I don't know exactly. Can't remember. Anyway, so there were windows there, but I didn't go out of them, whether they were open or closed. Okay, and there were chairs by that as well, maybe a radiator as well. And I was sat on the wall at the back, so the bottom of the page. Yeah, the bottom of the square. So I was sat there, and then so directly opposite me, near the radio, was this guy in a chair, right? Shaved head, looked a little bit militant, like I didn't really want to make eye contact with him because I felt like he was someone who may well come and beat me up. He also seemed quite agitated in his body mannerisms, so he was quite kind of shifty in his chair, and I don't know, he might have even been itching his arms or something, I don't know exactly, but he was agitated, right, and looking around a lot. And it was like I instinctively knew that if I was to talk to this person, it was going to be trouble. You can just tell that this person is going to be trouble, because they're the sort of person who will cause trouble with every person they come into contact with. It's their way of being at this time in their life, is to be, everyone else is a problem, and there's always an issue with something, right? I could just sense that was this kind of person at this time. However, these kind of people have a certain way of attracting attention to themselves as well. So he was, people are they're looking for trouble, and they're attracting your attention as well by being so trouble-seeking. So it's like, I was drawn to at least look at the guy because he's behaving agitatedly and looking. I'm curious as well. I'm sort of looking at the people around. Anyway, so I make eye contact with him for a bit. Don't know how long for. Briefly, maybe, but briefly it was enough. So he started having a go at me, and was saying like, "Why are you looking at me? Are you from the MI5? "Oh, I bet you're a spy, aren't you?" And I was like, "Oh man." So he thought I was from the MI5 and thought I was spying on him. And occasionally he would say stuff to that effect. Or he thought I was a police officer, undercover police officer, which is ridiculous because I'm in a fucking mental health ward. But yeah, so his deal was paranoia, basically. He was majorly paranoid that everyone was out to get him, and that he had some kind of secret truth, of which he was guarding, and everyone was like, in his mind, everyone was a potential undercover MI5 agent who was coming to get him and steal all his secrets. Which I later found out that one of his secrets was apparently that he had invented the Teletubbies, but more on that later. So he was a nutter. Again, I think I was the most sane person in there, but then, I'm sure that he would have said the same thing afterwards. So another person in there was kind of more like a regular guy. He just seemed a bit depressed, like he didn't have anything extreme like the other people. He seemed more just like depressed and jaded and lost in his face and the way he spoke and stuff. But other than that, I couldn't really see anything externally or from the way he was speaking or behaving that led me to believe that he was like going through anything major. There must have been something there. I mean, since then, I have seen that guy on the street, and he's a regular street drinker now. So he tends to walk around with a beer can in his hand, just casting around from place to place, in Slough High Street mainly, but sometimes in Windsor as well. Yeah, so I guess he's an alcoholic, or he is an alcoholic, and depressed as well. So when I first met him, though, it was in mental health ward, Ward 10. And I don't know whether he was drinking. I don't think you're allowed alcohol in the ward. You're definitely not allowed alcohol in the ward, actually. But he was smoking a lot as well. So yeah, so that was that guy. I don't really remember anyone from that room, anyone else from that room. So there's 4 people in there. And it's weird because a lot of those people, like, I don't know where they went after that. I mean, the MI5 guy, the paranoid guy who thought I was from the MI5. Let's call him MI5 guy or paranoid guy. Paranoid guy, right? Paranoid MI5 spy guy. Yeah, he was definitely in there, but at the time that I left. But I don't know where all the other people went. I don't know where Shrieky Girl went, for one thing. I don't know where the old gruff man went either. Yeah, I mean, I know where the smoking depressed guy went. Who else was there? Oh, that's all 4 of them. Yeah, but a lot of people just kind of disappeared. I think it's weird. They must have got let out, or they're transferred or something. People get transferred to other wards occasionally, or you get let out. Yeah, or they just went back to their rooms and spent all their time in their rooms because you do have your own room. I did have my own room, and everyone in that ward, I think, had their own room. And yeah, if you don't see them, then it could just be because they're spending all their time on their own in their own room. And I don't know exactly where all these people were, like where all these rooms were, because the people seem to sort of appear out of nowhere, and then disappear into nowhere as well. So other people who were in that ward were, I believe it was a room next to me. The guy's name was Hemraj. He was an old Indian guy. I think he was suffering from dementia or something like that, or Alzheimer's or dementia, or something like that. Basically, he was incoherent most of the time. So he would say stuff and then shortly after forget that he'd said it. He'd repeat the same thing over and over again. He's got some good stories to him. I think maybe I should leave Hemraj for the next one because he's got quite a few good stories to him. Not that he's just reduced to a story, of course. No, I think maybe he is just reduced to a story at this stage. I'm not going to pretend to have compassion for him, because that would be lying. I am treating him as just a story of amusement at the moment, and it would be a lie to say I feel for him, because I haven't quite reached that point with him yet. But maybe by the time I finish telling the stories, I will feel for him. I kind of feel for him, but at the moment, he's just a funny thing that happened to me. So we will try to bridge the gap between seeing people as objects of my amusement to to us being human beings going through a distressing situation. Fucking hell. Okay, thanks very much for watching. You now know a little bit about Ward 10. More on that to come. I did not kill my parents, ever. They are still alive. Life will get them without any help from me. I'll see you next time. I'll speak to the camera next time. Whether or not it actually records my face moving is another thing. Thanks for listening, mainly. I'll talk to you next time. Bye!